A house with a proper roof, warm water, and even something as simple as bath magic. Rin thought that such things represented the height of comfort. 1 month ago, she had been unconscious, her small body lying beside the shattered remains of a carriage. When Rin finally awoke, confusion flooded her mind. She wondered whether everyone else had died. She tried to recall what had happened. She remembered boarding the carriage at the orphanage, being sent away to an orphan trader, and then encountering bandits along the road. The carriage had been forced off a cliff. As her thoughts spiraled, Rin denied it again and again. Something was wrong. She had been a middle-aged man. Unable to control her emotions, she repeatedly muttered denial, though even she was unsure what she was trying to reject. Fragments of another life surfaced. Yuki Renjuru, a researcher in his 30s who worked on mechas. He had been involved in an accident, died, and then was reborn in another world as a girl. That realization struck her with terrifying clarity. Rin could not accept what had happened to her. What she was experiencing matched what people often referred to as reincarnation into another world. She had died and been reborn as her current self. The memories of her previous life had returned, not replacing her present existence but coexisting alongside it. Inside her were both the consciousness of a 30-year-old man and the identity of the young girl named Ren, existing simultaneously. Cold crept into her body. In her current condition, she was shuddering uncontrollably. She understood that if she did nothing, she would die. Her body temperature was dropping below approximately 30 degrees Celsius. Her thermoregulation had failed. Her breathing and blood circulation were weakening, leading inevitably toward death. It was hypothermia. She forced herself to think. What could she do? Was there any way to gain the knowledge or tools she needed to survive? Then she remembered, magic existed in this world. Even ordinary people could use certain forms of magic. The kind available to her was life magic, a type without an elemental attribute. Although her magical aptitude was low, there were still spells she could use. Among them were ignition and drying. She resolved to combine magic with her knowledge of physics. She gathered materials and constructed a cone-shaped structure, placing leaves over it to form a roof. Within the foliage, she could start a fire. She imagined igniting a bonfire, visualizing the spark forming even in damp conditions. If she could repeatedly dry her clothes, she could fight the hypothermia. With ignition, she could create fire even on a rainy day. Magic was extraordinary. In her previous life, she had undergone survival training. Without that knowledge, she would already be dead. Yet if she failed to properly incorporate magic into her plan, she might still die that very day. Eventually, alone in the forest, she rested beside the bonfire she had created. Exhaustion overtook her, and she fell asleep. While sleeping, she dreamed of an unfamiliar house. An old man stood before her and remarked that she must possess considerable ability to have survived the dark forest and reached him. As Ren tried to behave politely, the old man spoke her name, confirming it was Ren. He stared at her intently, commenting on her appearance and noting that although she was merely an orphan he had picked up, her face and figure were striking. Ren answered that he could do as he pleased. To her, that response itself felt revolting. It made no sense, there was no way it could be real. She could not accept it. When Ren awoke, she immediately left her makeshift shelter. She wondered if what she had experienced had been nothing more than a nightmare. The sky was clear, and as she began to walk slowly, her thoughts drifted. The face from her dream resembled the investor whose portraits were displayed back at the orphanage. Perhaps the strange dream was the result of her memories from her previous life and her current life becoming tangled together. Even so, recalling the old man's face left her in a foul mood. She reasoned that if she turned back, she might be protected, but if that was the price, then she had no choice but to run. She had to escape. Deep within the forest, 5 days after the accident, she awoke once again with the terrifying realization that she had nearly died, again. Ren was starving. It had been 5 days since the carriage incident. During that time, she remembered another ability aside from her life magic. Its name was Expert Eye. As the name suggested, it allowed her to discern an object's properties and status simply by looking at it. With this skill, she believed she might be able to identify wild plants suitable for medicine, potion making, or even consumption. If she could do that, she might avoid starving to death, or so she thought. When Ren actually ate the grass, she nearly died. She vomited violently. She realized that at this rate, she would never be able to survive by eating wild plants. Her throat was painfully dry, and she had no saliva left. Rin collapsed onto the ground and thought only of water. She felt certain she was going to die. Then she noticed the sky glowing faintly. She cried out that she wanted water. Suddenly, a large amount of water splashed directly onto her face. Startled, she wondered what it was. Rain? Water? Something had appeared from nowhere. Rin swallowed desperately and shouted that she needed more. It was not enough. She begged for water. To her astonishment, another splash struck her face. She asked for more. This time, a far greater volume of water poured over her. Relief and joy overwhelmed her. Rin felt genuinely happy for the first time in days. Afterward, she calmed down and realized she had been saved. Yet confusion quickly followed. How did it work? The idea that water could simply appear out of nothing made no sense. Rin paused, thinking carefully. If water responded to her desire, then perhaps food would as well. With that thought, she began to focus. What did she want to eat? Rin concentrated, imagining food as clearly as she could. As a former researcher, Rin understood that what she was doing was completely pointless. That realization made her laugh at herself. The idea was absurd, so absurd that it was almost funny to her. Even so, she kept thinking it, repeating it in her mind, and eventually saying it aloud. Rin wanted to eat an onigiri. The moment the words left her mouth, she froze. She thought that her scientist self had truly died just now, though in truth, it had already died once before. Embarrassment crept up on her as she shook her head, her cheeks flushing. Then, to her astonishment, food suddenly appeared in her hands. Without hesitation, Rin ate it. As she chewed, another thought surfaced. What about the law of conservation of mass? She dismissed it almost immediately. She changed her way of thinking and concluded that it did not matter. This was magic. The seasoning was perfect. Rin enjoyed the onigiri thoroughly. Before she realized it, she was completely full. She lay down on the ground, thinking about how much she had eaten. The sensation of fullness felt like pure bliss. At that moment, she no longer cared about anything else. Then, Rin suddenly sprang to her feet. Something was strange. Generally speaking, in fantasy worlds like this, there was a common method used to confirm one's circumstances. She nodded to herself, thinking that was right. Status. The moment she thought it, a display appeared before her eyes. Ren was startled. She questioned whether it had truly appeared. Was this really her status? The panel showed her name, race, occupation, and every one of her attributes. She stared at it in disbelief. She asked herself what she was seeing. Had she really possessed such stats? Her race, was it a celestial race? Her intelligence and magic attributes were exceptionally high. And storage, wasn't that supposed to be a legendary skill? Then there was creation magic. It was all completely insane. Suddenly, realization struck her. Could it be that the water and the onigiri from earlier were connected to this? Rin fell into the river and was left thoroughly irritated. After surviving another week in the wilderness, she rested beneath a tree while preparing a bonfire. As she recovered, she considered catching fish using the knowledge from her previous life, yet her current body refused to move as she wished. She concluded that she would have to rely on a fishing net instead. She began arranging tree branches, vines, and pebbles, preparing the materials. This marked the moment to rely on imagination magic, her newly acquired skill. Imagination magic allowed her to recreate objects in the same manner she once had. However, creating something from nothing required an enormous amount of magical power, far more than she possessed, which limited its use. By laying out the necessary components and fully understanding the structure of what she wished to create, she could instead use only a small amount of magic. Through this method, Rin successfully formed a net. She cast the net into the river and managed to catch a fish, finally securing food. The result astonished her, reinforcing the realization that her creation-based abilities were overwhelmingly powerful. Using stones, she restrained the fish she had caught, yet ingredients alone were not enough. She then considered how to cook it. She turned her thoughts toward her other new ability and hesitated, unsure what to retrieve. She contemplated creating a stone plate and chopsticks, then planned to make a furnace from clay. This process did not rely on imagination magic, but rather on her storage ability. She retrieved a clay stove, noting the awkwardness of the power, which allowed her to freely store objects and summon them within her field of vision. With her preparations complete, she decided to use both abilities together for cooking. The fish was grilled, and she retrieved the mushroom known as Pisces from her storage box. By combining everything through imagination magic, the meal was completed in an instant. Before her appeared a freshwater fish meuniere, served with mushrooms. The day was calm, with only a few clouds scattered across the sky. Run prepared to eat and felt momentarily puzzled by her own posture before finally beginning the meal. The taste caused her to blush, and she found herself genuinely pleased. The butter she had produced through creation magic blended well with the umami of the mushrooms and the delicate flesh of the river fish. With memories from her past life and the knowledge they provided, she realized she could fully utilize her abilities. Imagination magic combined with the storage box seemed capable of almost anything. After finishing her meal, Rin converted her remaining magical power into physical strength, relieved that this was something she could do with relative ease thanks to her current understanding. Once everything was complete, doubt crept in. With only this much ability, she questioned whether it would even be possible to leave the forest, especially in her current body. She stored everything away, then considered the idea of returning to where she came from. She wondered if she should go back home. However, she recognized that returning with such abilities would likely draw unwanted attention, leaving her surrounded by depraved individuals until her death. She refused to become someone's plaything. She did not want to return to the orphanage, nor did she want to die as others had. Instead, she resolved to run away and live on her own. With her abilities and the memories of her previous life, she believed she could master them and survive independently. Rin spent 3 full months building her house, and by the time it was finished, her MP had completely recovered. With the garden now producing vegetables, she turned her attention to cultivation. Using seed creation magic, which consumed only 1 MP per seed, she created radish, tomatoes, arugula, and peas. The mana consumption felt negligible when it was limited to seeds alone. She remained busy tending the garden, adding eggplants as well, and was surprised at how quickly the vegetables grew. That day's harvest brought her a sense of relief. With a stable food supply, she no longer needed to spend mana on daily sustenance and could instead allocate it toward clothing and furniture. She used creation magic once more, this time consuming 10 MP to produce a set of clothes. After quickly putting them on, she admired how nice they looked. She then prepared a meal, laying out several dishes: fried mushrooms with vegetables, a tomato and arugula salad, and a soup made with rock salt and vegetables. As she ate, she reflected on how unimaginable such a life would have seemed before, a self-sufficient, almost foolishly earnest Loha-style existence. With a kitchen garden of her own, she could truly live independently. Yet while eating, another thought surfaced. She wanted meat. Not just any meat, but rich, sauce-covered meat, steak, shabu-shabu, hamburgers. Memories of her previous life returned, reminding her that what had sustained her through relentless labor back then was not vegetables, but meat. That desire remained unshaken. After finishing her meal, she resolved to hunt. However, the only weapon she could create with her magic was a knife, and her frail body made close-range hunting impractical. This led her to consider long-range attacks. She immediately created a bow and attempted to draw it, gripping the string with all her strength. The effort left her completely drained. She collapsed to the ground, realizing that her body simply could not handle a bow. She then considered a large crossbow, but hesitated when she thought about the MP cost required to create one. This made her question whether her current level and mana capacity were sufficient. Firearms crossed her mind as well, but if a crossbow was already beyond her limits, guns would be impossible. Even though she could understand their structure through her abilities, creating them was out of the question. She explored other options in her mind: explosives, slings, air guns, wondering what kind of medium she could use. Eventually, she changed her approach entirely and focused on kinetic energy itself. If she could accelerate stone balls to extreme speeds, she might be able to launch them through something like a barrel made of compressed air. When she tested the idea and struck her target, the result exceeded her expectations. The wooden target was completely obliterated. Still, she recognized the need to restrain the power. She recalled that the average muzzle velocity of a handgun was around 400 meters per second, with rifles reaching roughly twice that speed, and understood that exceeding such limits indiscriminately would be dangerous. Rin estimated that the projectile should be about the same size as those commonly found in games, then decided to practice casting it at different speeds. She experimented repeatedly, testing air, bullets, and air bullets, refining the technique through trial and error. Eventually, she managed to strike the bull's eye using an arrow-like shot, delivering a lethal blow that shattered the wooden target. However, she realized she had overexerted herself, as dizziness set in when her mana ran dry. She calculated her mana consumption: 1 MP at a speed of 200 meters per second, 5 MP at 400 meters per second. At rifle-level velocity, around 800 meters per second, the cost would rise to 20 MP. She concluded that such power could not be used recklessly. Some time later, she returned home and equipped all her accessories. With her mana fully restored and all preparations complete, she set out once more. Venturing deeper into the forest alone, she recalled her current status and decided to check it before beginning the hunt. Her MP was full, and she estimated that she could safely expend roughly 80 mana over the span of 200 seconds. Hiding among the bushes, she soon spotted prey. As she quietly shifted her position, she found a promising target: 2 horned rabbits. In her mind, they were essentially rabbits with horns, wild game, and a source of rabbit meat. She imagined how good a roasted tranche would taste. She retrieved pebbles from her storage and set the projectile speed to 200 meters per second. Taking careful aim, she fired, successfully striking one rabbit. Without hesitation, she grabbed another pebble and aimed at the second rabbit beside it. In the end, she secured both rabbits without issue. Just as she felt satisfied and began thinking that all that remained was to return home and cook, an unseen presence crept up behind her. Unaware of the danger, she failed to notice the massive wild boar approaching. When she finally realized it was there, she was caught off guard. The distance was far too close, making the situation extremely dangerous. She cautiously stepped back, hoping it would not advance any further, but the wild boar suddenly attacked. She narrowly avoided the charge, instinctively diving out of the way. Rolling across the ground, she hurriedly prepared to counterattack, knowing that she had to rely on stone projectiles. The wild boar charged again. She hastily fired a stone toward it, but the shot missed. Panic set in as she realized how difficult it was to hit a fast-moving target that was actively pursuing her. To her shock, the wild boar managed to land a direct hit, sending her flying. Severely injured, she struggled on the ground, wondering if she was about to die once more. She had believed she could finally live freely, and the thought of losing that future terrified her. Refusing to give in, she crawled to a tree and drank a potion, desperately considering whether there was anything else she could still do to survive. As the wild boar charged straight toward her, she realized that the only thing she could do was pour everything she had into increasing both power and accuracy. She reflected on the nature of her magic, thinking that the air bullet resembled a living, spiraling ring. With that image in mind, she decided to set the output to the level of a warhead, resolving to expend all of her remaining mana in a single shot. By sheer luck, the attack struck true, and the charging wild boar was killed on the spot. Her hands shook violently as the aftermath set in, and she was overwhelmed by how reckless and insane it had been. Her vision blurred, and she realized she needed a potion immediately. She drank it in haste, and only then did she allow herself to lie down beneath a tree, finally able to breathe in peace while thinking back on how absurdly dangerous the situation had been. Not long after, a full spread awaited her on the table: roasted rabbit, boar meat grilled with rock salt, and stir-fried wild boar and rabbit. She eagerly dug into the meal, delighted by the fact that it had turned into a 2-course meat feast, all made possible by the beast meat she had obtained during her combat practice. She decided not to worry about the finer details and began with the rabbit. The moment she tasted it, she was convinced it was exactly as she had expected. Freshly caught rabbit meat burst with flavor, and she found herself unable to stop eating. Next, she moved on to the stir-fried boar. As soon as it touched her tongue, she was overwhelmed by its deep, meaty richness, accented by a subtle bitterness that only enhanced its character. She savored every bite, struck by the sheer concentration of nutrition and flavor that filled her mouth all at once. Comparing the two felt impossible. Both dishes were clear winners in their own way. In the end, she reflected that humans did not really need to express their hunting instincts so seriously, then immediately dismissed the thought as overthinking it. Whatever the case, life felt undeniably good. In Chapter 4, she realized that she could selectively remove specific items from storage. By taking out only the skin and meat, the dismantling process would be completed in mere seconds. Storage proved to be incredibly convenient, especially considering how much she had struggled with this task before. Fur, blood, entrails, bones, and the other parts of the body were efficiently separated and placed into storage. Later, these materials could be used as catalysts for creation magic and converted into things such as fertilizer, lard, medicine, and other useful products. She confirmed through experimentation that her magic functioned the same way with food and clothing. By performing certain actions, she could learn and level up her skills. The threshold for improvement appeared to be set quite low for the celestial race, and since she was part of it, progress came more easily to her. At present, she was focused on crafting spring coils, a task she had been working on for several days. Observing her own growth rate, she noted how remarkable it was. In this world, even someone with a level 3 skill could be considered an expert in their field, though she felt indifferent about that distinction. Time passed, the seasons changed, and autumn arrived. Her food issues had been completely resolved thanks to her ability to store supplies with ease. With that concern eliminated, she shifted her attention toward improving her standard of living. She jumped onto her bed, appreciating the comfort provided by the pocket coils she had made herself. It felt perfect, so comfortable that she wanted nothing more than to keep sleeping, to laze around endlessly. She rolled over, feeling bored with her solitary life as a hermit in the woods. She had no clear idea how to further raise her skill levels. Although her experience as a celestial continued to increase steadily, the progress was minimal. She wanted to fill it up completely so she could attempt to recreate the rainforest crossbow she had considered before. However, after building her shelter and securing enough food, she found that her motivation had largely vanished. She could not bring herself to do much of anything. While idly rolling around on her bed, she noticed an unfamiliar sensation. She had been hurt, or at least that was how it felt at first. She could not tell whether it was pain or a tickling discomfort. Then she realized that her clothes and fasteners were rubbing against each other. That reminded her of something from her past. She had been the largest person her age back at the orphanage, and now the quality of her food had improved significantly. She began to wonder whether there was some supplementary effect from the dishes made using her creation magic. She reflected on her body, noting that her chest had grown noticeably. Even if her overall size might be considered average, simple contact with her clothes caused discomfort. Considering her daily activities, this was clearly going to become a problem. She touched her chest, uncertain about what to do next, and concluded that she would probably need proper underwear, starting with something like a bra. Rin grabbed her chest and was taken aback by the sensation. The feeling surprised her, and she found it unexpectedly intense. She tried to dismiss it, telling herself that it was nothing more than touching her own body. Even so, she continued squeezing her breasts, questioning whether it was really acceptable for her to do such a thing. Memories of her previous life, when she had been a man, surfaced in her mind. Now, however, she inhabited a woman's body, and those two sets of experiences had merged into who she was in the present. Lying down, she let her hand wander to the sensitive area below, driven by curiosity rather than intention. She reasoned that such curiosity was natural and understandable. As the sensations grew stronger, she felt a sense of pleasure and convinced herself that, for the sake of understanding her own body, she should continue experimenting. The next morning, she woke up abruptly, overwhelmed by the realization of how far she had gone. The sensations left behind made her acutely aware of how dangerous a girl's body could be if she let herself indulge too much. She resolved that she should exercise restraint. Still, the thought crossed her mind that repeating it once more would not cause any harm. Morning turned into night, and night returned to morning, yet she remained in bed. It was only then that she realized she had spent 3 entire days like that. The awareness made her uneasy, and she grew wary of letting her curiosity spiral any further. Later, while eating in the kitchen, she reflected on the experience, understanding at last why it felt the way it did. Regardless, the sensation had been undeniably pleasurable, and she felt compelled to experience everything available to her in this new body. She felt satisfied, even if she could not quite articulate why. Her thoughts drifted, and she struggled to remember what she had originally planned to do. Then it came back to her. She had intended to make lingerie. After finishing her meal, she prepared to use her creation magic. She examined a bra she produced, studying its shape and function, but decided it was insufficient as it was. If she wanted to improve her dressmaking skills, it needed to be more refined. She considered adding lace and ensuring that the top and bottom matched as a set. Standing before the mirror, she became fully absorbed in the process and ended up crafting an especially provocative piece of underwear. She regarded it as something she could use whenever she felt inclined to indulge herself. Wearing it made her acutely aware of how lewd it looked, and that awareness only heightened her arousal. Unable to restrain herself any longer, she found herself giving in to temptation once again. Morning turned into night, and night turned into morning once again. Ren was furious with herself, having realized that she had ended up indulging herself for 3 more days straight. At this rate, she thought she was going to become a complete idiot. Deciding to put a stop to it for the moment, she resolved to check her status again to see what level she was actually at. When she looked over her status and noticed entries labeled with things like lewdness and large chest levels, she was utterly shocked. She could not understand what was going on. How could something like lewdness or having a large chest even be considered skills? Even so, the presence of lewd-related skills felt excessive to her. She firmly decided that from now on, she would make sure not to engage in any more lewd behavior. Reflecting on her growth, she realized that she had been using her creation magic extensively to raise her levels. After finally finishing everything she had been doing, she felt a sense of relief, thinking that she was done for now. Before her lay the results of her work, masterpieces that combined her engineering knowledge with magic. The first was a stress relief device that used wind magic, designed so that a rubber duck's bill would vibrate at high speed whenever air was drawn in, functioning as a message or relaxation tool. The second was a lightweight massage device that rotated using water currents, generating vibrations to ease stiffness in the shoulders. Finally, there was a device featuring a protruding rod that relied on fire-based steam magic, driving it in a back-and-forth piston motion. Looking at it, Ren began to wonder whether she could already start experimenting with steam engines. This, she thought, was what she needed to be doing, creating prototypes, devices that could eventually change everything. Ren busied herself with repairs. After finishing the work, she applied glass wool, a high-density insulating material made from substances with sound-absorbing properties, carefully skimming it along the walls. She wondered whether this would be enough to soundproof the space, though it would certainly help with her nightly routine. Looking over the results, she felt she might have gone a little overboard. Her lewd-related skills had already risen to level 6, and it seemed only a matter of time before they climbed even higher. Suddenly, confusion set in when her detection skill reacted. Something was nearby. She had heard of magical beasts and monsters before, but she questioned whether that was truly what she had sensed. With unease creeping in, she tightened her equipment and prepared herself, knowing she would need to confirm it with her own eyes. Deep within the forest, Rin began scouting the area. She considered the possibility that whatever she detected could be stronger than her, which was why she had come fully equipped, with her air barrel skill ready for immediate use. She advanced carefully, feeling that the presence should be close. To her surprise, what appeared before her was a small, adorable puppy. Almost immediately she reconsidered, realizing it more closely resembled a wolf cub, a creature categorized as a magical beast. In the next instant, a massive wolf emerged. It became clear that this was the cub's parent, and its sheer size made it far more dangerous than the boar she had fought before. Ren reacted quickly, activating her air barrel magic. The attack struck the giant wolf successfully, leaving it badly injured, the wound deep and severe. Treating a beast in such a situation would be extremely dangerous, as there was always the risk of becoming prey, of being followed back home and attacked later. Ren prepared herself to strike again, thinking that killing it while she still could would be the safest option. Before she could act, she saw the cub licking the injured giant wolf. She paused, sensing no killing intent from either of them. She struggled internally, reminding herself not to let emotion cloud her judgment and forcing herself to think clearly about her own freedom. She questioned what freedom truly meant. Standing there, she weighed her choices, killing the wolf and taking its fur, or leaving and returning home, abandoning the creature in its wounded state. She acknowledged that she was free to choose either path, free to act as she wished. In the end, Rin chose to heal the giant wolf. Even as she did, she could tell that it remained wary of her, which was only natural. It was likely the first time the beast had ever been treated kindly by a human. She was amazed at how effective the potion was, watching as the wound rapidly began to recover. Ren froze when her eyes met those of the giant wolf. She wondered whether it understood that she was the one who had healed it. In the reflection of the wolf's massive eye, she saw herself staring back. The giant wolf and the cub walked away together, disappearing into the forest. Ren reflected that she had never truly expected any form of gratitude. After all, it was a beast. She considered how harsh the laws of nature were, how humans and animals could never truly communicate. For her, that separation was acceptable. With no way to understand one another, they would never meet again, and she believed that was what was best for both sides. That was how Rin understood the situation at the time. Contrary to her expectations, the giant wolf and the cub later appeared in front of her house. Rin wondered why the two of them were still lingering around her home. On another occasion, while she was out hunting in the forest, they happened to run into each other again. She even chose to share part of her spoils with them, and the experience stirred a sense of nostalgia within her. Still, she remained stunned that the giant wolf continued to return. Ren reflected on how humans treated their pets, thinking that one either committed to caring for them properly or did not keep them at all. Since she had planned to leave this life behind, she initially wanted to drive the wolf away. Yet, as she thought about it, she found the cub to be nothing but a troublesome child. In the end, she lay down against the wolf, unable to completely push it away. Ren gave names to the two wolves. She called the giant wolf Norn, and the cub Bur. By naming them, she revealed her attachment, marking the moment they ceased to be mere random beasts and instead became beings connected to her life. From that point on, they were no longer just a wolf and a puppy wandering the forest, but companions who shared her days. With that thought lingering in her mind, Ren wrapped her arms around Norn, marveling at just how fluffy the massive body felt beneath her touch. Afterward, Ren busied herself tending to her garden. As she worked, she noticed the air growing colder and wondered if winter was approaching. Once she finished caring for the plants, she considered whether she should head out to hunt. Before she could decide, Norn suddenly bumped into her, drawing her attention. Confused, Ren tried to understand what was happening as Norn began leading her deeper into the forest. She struggled to keep up, trying to slow him down, unsure of his intention. Norn then bit onto her collar and dragged her forward, eventually bringing her close to a group of orcs. Ren was startled by the sight. Together with Norn, she hid within the bushes, carefully observing their surroundings. There were many orcs gathered there, at least 10 by her count. It soon became clear to her that Norn intended to hunt them. As Norn leaned closer to her, Ren considered the situation. Orc meat could be used as an ingredient, and even if she chose not to make use of it, orcs were still dangerous monsters capable of attacking travelers or nearby villages. Making up her mind, Ren used her air barrel skill in combination with her sniping ability, launching precise attacks. The orc group was completely wiped out. Ren charged forward alongside Norn and Bar toward the fallen corpses, feeling that the battle had been effortless. Upon arriving, she decided that letting the wolves have some of the spoils would not be a problem. She was surprised to see Norn and Baru immediately begin devouring the orc bodies. As she watched them eat, another realization surfaced. To have scouted the orcs so effectively and chosen an ideal vantage point, Norn's intelligence seemed unusually high. That thought made Ren pause. She wondered whether Norn was far too clever for an ordinary magical beast. Deciding to confirm her suspicion, she used her appraisal skill. To view the status of a magical beast, her appraisal skill needed to be sufficiently leveled, and hers had already reached level 8. In this world, that alone could qualify her as a genius. She questioned whether the skill would work, then focused it on Norn. When Norn's status appeared before her, Ren was stunned. The name Fenrir stood out. She recognized it as a legendary class beast. No matter how she looked at Norn, his size alone was abnormal for an ordinary wolf, already exceeding 2 meters. According to the history of this world, Fenrir-type beings were said to be capable of communicating with humans. However, Norn was still very young, so Rin reasoned that perhaps he had not yet gained the ability to speak. Norn clearly understood what was being conveyed, which made Rin wonder whether she might soon be able to communicate with him directly. The thought filled her with anticipation. She then checked Belle's status as well, and upon seeing it, she immediately embraced Belle, overwhelmed by how adorable and fluffy the cub was. After that, the three of them walked together through the forest. As they moved along, Rin reflected on the fact that Norn's detection skill was even higher than her own, which was already quite advanced. This realization troubled her. If there was something in the forest capable of avoiding a level 7 detection skill and even injuring a Fenrir, then there was undoubtedly a dangerous presence nearby. The possibility made her think that they might need to consider relocating sooner rather than later. That night, Rin began cooking. She planned to extract lard from the orcs they had hunted, using both orc oil and orc meat. She cut the meat into small chunks, marinated it with soy sauce and sake, and added finely chopped ginger. After letting the meat soak, she fried it in the rendered orc oil. She also prepared eggplants and other vegetables, then made a sauce using potatoes, thickening it with the starch extracted from them. The final dish consisted of deep-fried orc meat and root vegetables coated in a thick, starchy sauce. Rin started eating and found herself enjoying it immensely. The texture and taste reminded her of perfectly ordinary pork, and the flavor left her craving more. She thought that having rice alongside it would have been perfect, and if she had breadcrumbs, she could have even made cutlets. With winter approaching, she considered trying to grow wheat in the spring. In the end, she did not finish everything, having grown too full. Later, the wolves began making noise outside. Around the same time, Rin started feeling unwell, having fallen sick from the orc oil. She realized that it was not because the oil itself was spoiled, but because its quality did not suit her body. Norn licked her, staying close. Despite her condition, Rin prepared to go hunting again that day, gathering herself and moving with Norn. As she did, Rin reflected on the need to think seriously about how to make a living. Living near a city would certainly be convenient, but she wanted to avoid contact with people as much as possible. Being an introvert, she preferred solitude. Just as those thoughts crossed her mind, Norn suddenly sensed something. Ren was confused at first, but then she saw them. 3 goblins accompanied by a single human. At that moment, her desire to avoid people no longer mattered, because now was not the time to be worrying about such things. The girl cried out desperately as she was surrounded by goblins trying to kill her, and Ren immediately recognized that she was in danger. Ren quickly assessed the situation and saw that there were 3 goblins within roughly 50 feet. If she attempted to snipe them from that distance, there was a real risk that her air barrel could hit the child instead. Because of that, she decided she needed to close the distance first. As she repositioned herself, Rin planned her next move. While activating her skill, she took a high-grade status enhancement potion from storage and directly injected it into her veins. Using it in this manner placed an immense burden on her body, but the effects would activate far faster than if she consumed it orally. In the next instant, Rin leapt forward an enormous distance. The sudden surge in agility and strength meant her muscles and body would undoubtedly ache afterward. She clenched her teeth and signaled Norn to handle the enemies in the rear. Norn responded with a growl as Rin charged straight toward the group surrounding the girl. She unleashed her air barrel, striking the goblins one after another, while the remaining ones were viciously torn apart by Norn. One goblin froze in shock, unable to react. Rin gritted her teeth when she saw that only one enemy remained. She decided to finish it with a body-enhanced aerial free kick, driving her foot powerfully into its neck and ending it decisively. Ren reflected that her physical abilities were usually nothing special, yet just moments ago she must have looked like a heroic figure. She acknowledged how incredible the potion was. The girl continued crying when she saw Ren. Standing with her back toward the girl, Ren lingered in the afterglow of her actions. Realizing that she could not bring herself to say anything after striking such a heroic pose, she pulled up her hood instead, aware that others might be searching for her. She did not want the girl to see her face. Ren then reached out toward the girl, checking whether she was all right and whether she had been injured. Instead of calming down, the girl cried even harder, her fear intensifying. Ren was confused by this reaction, as it was not what she had expected. Nearby, Norn had already begun devouring the goblin corpses. Ren panicked immediately and tried to get Norn to stop, then turned her attention back to the girl, checking on her again. Since the girl remained terrified, Ren insisted that Norn stop eating the goblins altogether. Several hours later, the girl woke up from her sleep and found herself inside a room. Rin came to see her and checked on her condition, wanting to make sure she was feeling all right. She carefully confirmed once more that the girl had not suffered any injuries. Rin asked the girl to allow her to check for any injuries, just to be safe. The girl became flustered and, with innocent confusion, asked where she was. Rin thought that the expression on her face was exactly what one would expect from a child in such a situation. She explained that they were inside her house. Rin then asked whether the girl remembered being attacked by the goblins. At the mention of it, the girl began to tremble in fear. Seeing her reaction, Rin gave an awkward smile and reassured her that she was safe now and that the goblins had already been dealt with. Hearing this, the girl recalled how Ren and the wolf had taken care of the goblins. Suddenly, she began to cry again, terrified, wondering if she would be eaten as well. Ren responded flatly that she would not, explaining that the wolf was currently sleeping outside. She added that if the girl took a closer look, she would see just how cute Norn actually was. Ren then asked whether she wanted to pet him, but the girl immediately refused. Ren understood her reaction and, with a gentle smile, offered her some tea instead, assuming she must be thirsty. The girl began to sweat nervously. Watching this, Ren felt a twinge of discomfort, realizing just how cautious the child was. To ease her fears, Ren drank from the cup herself, demonstrating that the tea was not poisoned. Only then did the girl lower her guard and finally take a sip. She was amazed by the taste, finding it sweet and unlike anything she had ever had before. Ren smiled to herself, knowing that she had used sucralose, a substance similar to fructose but 200 times sweeter than sugar. She smirked inwardly, thinking that corn was difficult to obtain in this world, and that any child who tasted something like this would immediately become fond of it. The girl asked if she could have another cup, and Ren laughed, encouraging her to drink as much as she liked. After a short while, Ren asked the girl what she had been doing in that area the day before and why she had ventured so deep into a forest filled with dangerous monsters. Tearfully, the girl explained that her mother was sick. There had been an epidemic outbreak in her village, and everyone had become infected. According to rumors from passing travelers, the village was supposedly under a curse. With shops quickly running out of medicine, she had gone into the forest to gather medicinal herbs. At last, Ren understood why the girl had been attacked by goblins. She thought that the idea of a curse was a foolish assumption. Based on what she had heard, the symptoms sounded very similar to those of the influenza virus. Medicine for influenza, such as neuraminidase inhibitors like lenanemivir, should have been more than sufficient to treat it. Ren tried to recall what the chemical chain looked like. After piecing it together in her mind, she separated and synthesized the formula using her creation magic. Smoke gathered around her as she worked, causing the girl's jaw to drop in shock. When the smoke cleared, a fine powder had formed in Ren's hand. Seeing the result, Ren realized that she had somehow succeeded, and the ease with which she could accomplish something like this frightened her a little at times. She carefully sealed the powdered medicine inside a pouch. At first, she had thought it would be impossible, yet it turned out to be far easier to create molecules directly through magic. Even so, she was stunned when she checked her status and saw that the process had consumed 100 mana. She had not expected it to cost that much. The girl was equally stunned when Ren handed her the pouch and instructed her to have her mother drink it. When the girl asked what was inside, Ren explained that it was medicine, adding that as long as her mother drank it, ate properly, and rested in a warm place, she would likely recover. The girl then asked if Ren was a witch. Ren became flustered, thinking that it was probably because she always kept her hood on. She denied being a witch and corrected the girl, insisting that she was not one, even if she lived in a place like this. Hesitantly, the girl told Ren that she did not have any money to give her, yet Ren was still offering the medicine. Ren smiled and told her it was fine. She then noticed how late it had gotten and invited the girl to stay in her house for the night. The girl simply stared at her in response. Ren could not help but feel exasperated, realizing that the girl was being suspicious of her once again. Ren stood up and decided that if that was how it was going to be, then so be it. She would simply show the girl just how hospitable Japanese people could be. Determined to show off her cooking skills, Ren prepared hamburger meat using a mix of orc meat and venison. She grilled it over high heat to lock in the juices, cooking it thoroughly with the lid on. She paired it with homemade ketchup made from tomatoes she had grown herself, though it turned out slightly sweeter than expected. The sauce was made with tomatoes, garlic, eggplants, salt, sugar, pepper, and various spices. At last, a mouth-watering dish was served, orc meat and venison hamburgers topped with homemade tomato sauce and fried vegetables. The girl was stunned by the sight of the food and asked what it was. Ren assured her that it was not poisoned and explained that serving a good meal to guests was only natural. As she sliced into the meat, juices spilled out, and Ren knew that using the orc oil, combined with properly frying it in animal fat, had enhanced both the texture and juiciness of the meat and venison. The aroma alone made it even more appetizing, inviting them to savor every bite. The girl declared that the food was incredibly delicious and that it was the first time in her life she had ever tasted anything like it. As she savored each bite, she eventually could no longer restrain herself. Rin felt relieved and happy that the girl enjoyed the meal and encouraged her not to hold back, believing that as a host, it was her responsibility to treat her guest well. Rin herself could no longer wait and joined the girl in eating. A few minutes later, the girl was already full and slumped comfortably on the sofa. Rin cheerfully informed her that she had prepared the bath. The girl grew excited and followed Rin, thoroughly enjoying her time soaking in the bathtub. After they finished bathing, Rin guided her to a room. The girl happily jumped onto the bed and marveled at how large it was. Watching the girl's reactions to everything was entertaining for Rin. She briefly thought that her own bed was even bigger, though she could not let the girl sleep there. Before long, the girl had fallen asleep and the night passed peacefully in Ren's home. The next morning, as the girl prepared to leave, Ren gave her additional potions to take back with her. The girl was overjoyed by the farewell gifts, and Ren, knowing that the girl's mother was still in poor condition, reminded her to make sure her mother drank the potions. At the gate, the girl expressed her gratitude for everything Ren had done. After seeing her off, Ren removed her hood and reflected that she had ended up acting like a good person for an unexpected guest. From her previous life to the present, Ren had never been good at interacting with others. Still, she thought that behaving kindly was not such a bad thing, especially if it meant being thanked once a year or so. She casually referred to it as her feeding strategy. What Ren did not realize was that the events of that day would have a lasting impact on her life, though at the time, she had no way of knowing it. In the middle of the forest, Ren reflected on the fact that winter had already arrived, and that mushrooms and nuts were no longer to be found. She considered going hunting again and checked with Norn, who responded with an affirmative sound. Ren recalled what the girl from a few days earlier had mentioned, that the village was relatively close to this area. Even so, as a shut-in, Ren disliked the idea of living too near other people. With the number of skills she possessed, she could easily attract trouble, especially if strange visitors began to appear. That concern soon proved justified. In front of her house, a man suddenly asked whether she was the witch. Ren was caught off guard and remained silent. The man remarked that she was not as tall as he had imagined. Internally, Ren noted that a strange visitor had finally shown up. The man continued, asking whether she was the one living there. Ren remained confused as he pressed on with a barrage of questions, asking if she lived alone, complimenting her house, and then questioning how she had managed to build it in the first place. As the questioning continued, Ren grew increasingly irritated. She calmly excused herself and pointed out that he had been asking an excessive number of questions. She then countered by wondering whether she was truly obligated to answer any of them. She explained how annoying it was to be suddenly bombarded with questions by people who had not even introduced themselves, and how they had gone so far as to call her a witch on their own accord. The man began to stutter and explained that the girl, his sister, had told him that the person who gave her the medicine was a witch. He clarified that he was referring to the girl from a few days earlier. Ren immediately corrected the little girl, reiterating that she was not a witch. The girl responded by calling her a witch-like older sister instead. Ren turned her back on them and headed toward her door, explaining that she was busy preparing for winter and wishing them goodbye. Before she could enter, another unexpected visitor appeared. This time, a woman grabbed Ren and begged her to listen to them. The woman apologized for her younger brother's behavior on his behalf and scolded him for forgetting the reason they had come to Ren's home in the first place. The man apologized awkwardly and explained that they had come to express their gratitude. Thanks to the medicine Ren had given, their mother had recovered from her illness. He thanked Ren once more. Ren quietly remarked that she was glad to hear it. She had been worried that their mother's illness might have been something different from what she had assumed, but it turned out to be influenza after all. She sighed in relief and expressed her happiness that their mother had recovered. However, she flinched when one of them hesitantly asked whether she could provide more of the medicine she had created. The man explained that there were still several people in the village who were very sick, and he asked Ren to help save them as well. Hearing the sudden request, Ren's expression darkened as she realized she had known from the start that this would turn into something troublesome. The woman hurriedly apologized for bringing it up so abruptly. She introduced herself as Kali, Neil's older sister, and explained that the people of the village wanted medicine, with the two of them acting as representatives. Kali then asked again whether Ren could make more medicine for them. She also pointed out that Ren had mentioned preparing for winter earlier, yet she did not appear to be carrying anything. Kali questioned what Ren was actually doing and asked whether she was a skill holder. With a smile, she added that she did not particularly care whether Ren was a witch or not. Ren cursed inwardly at how perceptive Kali was. Older sisters were sharp, younger brothers blunt. Together, they formed the worst possible combination for her to deal with. The fact that they had come empty-handed also made it clear that they were expecting her to give the medicine away for free. Since it took 100 mana to make a single dose, she could only manage one per day. Ren made it clear that she was not a saint or anything of the sort. She explained that, unfortunately, she did not have any more medicine on hand. She further clarified that producing it required a great deal of time and materials, and that even if she made medicine for one person, she did not want to be repeatedly approached afterward to make more. Neil responded enthusiastically, asking what materials were needed if that was all it took to produce the medicine. Ren's expression grew darker, realizing that he would not give up so easily. She told him to be considerate of her position as well and moved to end the conversation, bidding them farewell. Neil complained under his breath, muttering that they had asked nicely, and reached out to grab Ren's hood, pulling it back and revealing her face. Ren was startled. Neil froze and blushed intensely upon seeing her. At that moment, Norn let out an angry roar, frightening the siblings. Ren quickly covered her face again and firmly stated that no matter how many times they bowed or pleaded, what they were asking for was impossible. She politely but firmly told them to turn around and head back. The girl Ren had saved earlier looked back at her sadly, even as her siblings urged that it was time to leave. Norn remained on guard as the siblings walked away. Later that night, Ren lay in bed, troubled by how awkward the timing was for her usual daily routine. However, when she remembered the disappointed look on the girl's face, she realized there was no way she could bring herself to carry it out at all. The next morning, Ren woke up with renewed energy, thinking that it was time to go winter hunting again. She believed that the orc meat she had obtained a few days earlier would be enough for herself, but she still needed to secure portions for Norn and Belle. As she looked out the window, she noticed a man standing in front of her gate. If she was not mistaken, it was Neil. Ren thought to herself that he was a creep. Deciding she would simply stay inside and spend the day creating other things instead, she turned away from the window. Over the next few days, Ren kept noticing Neil standing in the same spot outside her house. She felt uneasy, not wanting him to keep returning repeatedly. Yet a thought gnawed at her. If he stopped coming, could it mean that the people in the village no longer needed the medicine, that someone had died? While she knew it was possible that wasn't the case, there was an equal chance it could be true. The thought weighed on her, and Ren found herself sitting in her rocking chair, feeling increasingly guilty. Unable to bear it any longer, she stood and decided to make the medicine, expending 100 mana in the process. She carefully tied the pouch and slipped outside stealthily, hiding from Neil, who was still waiting outside. She moved quietly through the forest toward the village, where she spotted the girl fetching water at the well. Upon seeing Ren, the girl hesitated, calling her, "Which one Isen?" But Ren gestured for her to be quiet. Once seated together, Ren reminded her again that she was not a witch. The girl quickly apologized and asked why Ren had come to the village. Ren handed her the pouch, explaining that she had come to deliver the medicine. She also mentioned that she had just enough leftover materials to make this single dose. The girl immediately rose, concerned about whether it was truly okay to accept the medicine. Ren explained that she would agree under one condition. Neil, the girl's older brother, had to stop coming to her house every day, as it was a constant nuisance. The girl blushed and apologized for her brother's behavior. Satisfied, Ren told her she would be on her way. The girl thanked her happily. Just as Ren was leaving, she remembered something important. She turned back and told the girl seriously that she would not be gathering any more materials and that this would be the final dose. Even if the girl begged, Ren absolutely would not make more. She instructed the girl to make sure the medicine reached those who truly needed it, warning that failing to do so would bring regret. The girl stuttered but promised she understood. Returning home, Ren moved through the forest with light, leaping steps, humming happily. She felt relieved, having properly delivered her warning and fulfilled her duty, finally allowing herself to lay her guilt to rest. That night, she took extra care to make herself look cute, remembering that it had been about a week since she last completed her daily routine. The next morning, Ren was suddenly awakened by a barrage of loud knocks on her door. Irritated, she muttered about the noise and got up, paying no mind to her sleeping attire. She had been up all night carrying out her daily routine, so in many ways, she had been sleeping soundly and deeply before being disturbed. Outside her door, Neil froze in surprise as the door began to open. Ren, still groggy and half asleep, complained irritably that she had no interest in subscribing to newspapers, watching television, or listening to any religious solicitations. She was still in her skimpy sleepwear as she finished speaking, and the sight of Neil standing there left her completely dumbfounded. Neil's face turned red at seeing her, while Ren, realizing the situation, screamed and slammed the door shut immediately. Embarrassed beyond belief, Ren felt mortified that he had seen her like that, yet she knew she probably needed to get changed anyway. With a flick of her hand, she summoned her hooded outfit from storage and dressed herself. When she opened the door again, now properly covered, Neil was still blushing deeply. Flushed with embarrassment herself, Ren greeted him with a calm, "Good morning," which Neil awkwardly returned. Without lingering, Ren bid him goodbye and shut the door, trying to end the interaction quickly. Neil called out for her to wait, explaining that he only wanted to express his gratitude. He mentioned that his younger sister had told him that Ren would not make any more of the medicine, and he thanked her for taking the time and effort to deliver such a valuable item. Having heard him, Ren acknowledged his thanks but insisted that he leave already. Neil persisted, saying that he still felt it wasn't enough to repay her, and presented her with a basket of vegetables. Ren accepted them politely, thanked him, and again urged him to leave, telling him to just leave the basket by the door. Neil asked why she was trying so hard to chase him away. Ren glared at him and explained that he was trying to enter her home uninvited, and reminded him that she was simply a woman living alone in the middle of nowhere, seeking a quiet life. Unable to argue, Neil remained silent. Ren told him that if he understood, he should head home immediately and never return. She did not forget to thank him for the vegetables before slamming the door shut. Watching from her window, she saw that he had finally left. Ren honestly wondered why Neil was so determined to bother her. She couldn't quite understand his persistence. Shivering from the cold, she noted that winter was rapidly approaching. With a flick of her hand, she summoned her storage and returned to the comfort of her peaceful home. Snapping into her skimpy sleepwear, Ren decided it was time to head back to bed and get some rest. Meanwhile, elsewhere, two men were discussing the exceptional quality of the potions. One suggested that the Lord should be notified about them, while the other disagreed, proposing that trading the potion could yield a massive profit. Both wondered who could have created such a remarkable concoction. In the month of December, Ren had not yet been bothered by any troublesome visitors. As snow began to fall, she stayed inside her home, spending her time practicing steelmaking and potion crafting. However, a difficult day for her was approaching, and Ren found herself in a dilemma. Not wanting to deal with anything at all, she hastily made some painkillers, took them, and went straight to bed. When she woke up, the world outside was completely covered in snow. She saw Norn happily running around the yard, clearly enjoying the change. By January, even in this world, people observed the new year. Ren remembered that even orphanages would usually prepare better food to celebrate the occasion. That brought back memories of the friends she had once had at the orphanage. She wondered whether it would be better to avoid making contact with them altogether, in order to keep the secret that she was still alive. The snowfall was heavy, and her house ended up buried under it. Instead of using a snow shovel, Ren cleared the snow away with her storage ability. She noticed that Belle was doing well too, energetically running around the yard. In February, which was considered Ren's birthday, not her real one, but the date given to her by the orphanage, she baked a cake and ate it. Norn and Belle celebrated with her, and the experience made her genuinely happy. Because of the persistent snow, Ren spent most of her time inside her room, and her daily routine continued smoothly. However, when she checked her status, she became extremely frustrated upon seeing that her lewdness level had increased yet again. Around March, the snow finally stopped, allowing Ren to go outside. She tried practicing her swordsmanship, but it did not go well. She thought that she might be able to deceive her body by using potions to gain better control over it, but she had a bad feeling that something would go wrong if she tried. To her shock, Norn's and Belle's statuses were steadily increasing. When she watched them running around the yard, she realized that they were not simply playing but were actually honing their hunting skills. Ren believed that her peaceful everyday life would continue on like this, until a stone suddenly shattered her window. At last, an unwanted guest appeared. A crooked-looking man directly confronted her, asking whether she was the witch. He then questioned whether she was the one who had made the medicine that Parker obtained. Ren was bewildered as the man went on to explain that 3 siblings had come to her house before, and that the leftover potions she had given them were sold for a good price. He demanded that she give him some as well. Ren stayed on guard and questioned why she should comply. The man insisted that since she was a witch, she should hand the medicine over for free. He repeated his demand. As the tension between them escalated, Ren called Norn and pointed toward the man. Norn growled, and the man realized he was about to be attacked. Panicking, he screamed and ran away from Ren's house. Ren was furious, wondering why the village had to be like this. Since she had scared him off so thoroughly, she believed he would not return. However, the very next day, her house was surrounded by villagers who demanded that she hand over her potions. Ren's frustration deepened when she saw that the number of people had only increased. She had seen this kind of scene before. It was a witch hunt. She called for Norn, and the wolf went down to where the villagers were gathered and attacked them. Norn soon returned to Ren, carrying a man by the collar. The man hastily explained that he came from the neighboring village. He told Ren that his lord wanted her to come with him and his men, and that merchants were already searching for routes leading to this place. He then added that he would also like to receive some potions for free. Ren angrily refused, making it clear that she would not give out any. Later that day, Ren fell into deep contemplation, fully aware that the situation had become a serious problem. She decided that it was finally time to leave. When Norn approached her, Ren told the wolf that she was thinking of departing. She asked whether Norn wanted to stay behind in the forest or come with her. Norn moved closer to Ren, making its answer obvious. Ren smiled happily, understanding the wolf's decision, and asked once more if it truly wanted to come with her. Norn nodded in response. Ren felt that she could somehow understand what Norn was trying to convey, possibly because her life magic level had increased. Overjoyed, she hugged Norn and thanked it, expressing how happy the wolf's choice made her. Moments later, Rin resolved that they would leave immediately. Standing in front of her house, Rin stretched out her hand. She had lived there for a long time and made countless memories within those walls. Even so, she knew she had to leave the forest. Staying there would only lead to more trouble. Activating her storage ability, Rin stored the entire house. She had planned for this in advance. Before building it, she had constructed the foundation using stone walls in separate sections. Because of that, she was able to store not only the house itself, but also the backyard and the garden. Rin felt deeply grateful for her storage ability, thinking it would have been a waste to discard something they had worked so hard to build. At last, Rin, Norn, and Belle set off together. They passed through the forest, where snow blanketed the trees, moving under the cover of night. Their destination lay to the east, toward a town called Harula. Coco's village was to the southeast, while to the south lay the town of Nizan, a place frequently visited by merchants. Rin recalled that only 3 people had clearly seen her face so far: the young girl Coco, her older sister Kali, and their older brother Neil. Considering that it was only 3 individuals, and that Harula was a fairly large town, Rin reasoned that no one there should be able to recognize her even if she went. After all, they were the ones she had given the medicine to. Although Rin disliked Neil, she understood that he had acted out of a desire to save someone who was sick. She did not believe that Neil was the type of person who would pursue someone out of selfish intent. Meanwhile, a man hurried toward the place where Ren's house had once stood. Nearby, a group of soldiers discussed the scene, noting that only tracks remained and speculating that it truly might have been the work of a witch. When Neil arrived, he was out of breath and stared in shock at the empty lot before him. The house was gone, with only the stairs left behind. Neil was overcome with regret and blamed himself, believing it was all his fault. He thought that because he had sold the potions made by the forest witch, she had ultimately been driven away. Clenching his fists, Neil resolved to take responsibility for what had happened. Meanwhile, Rin felt the cold seeping into her body, and Belle was clearly exhausted. Rin noticed Belle's condition and decided that they needed to stop and rest for a while. As they rested, Rin reflected that although she possessed a potion for recovering from fatigue, beasts had their own natural pace. She let them rest as much as they needed. With a compass in hand, Rin contemplated her direction as sunlight began to spill through the forest ahead. After a few minutes, her eyes lit up in awe when she caught sight of a village spread out before her. She also noticed a highway nearby and immediately tempered her excitement, reminding herself that she was like an old man who should not get overly thrilled. Once she emerged from the forest, she would be able to follow the highway as morning arrived. Ren was filled with excitement at the feeling of something new, completely unaware of the horse-drawn carriage approaching from behind. Her moment of anticipation was abruptly cut short when the carriage struck her from the rear. Ren wrote that her future and her destiny depended entirely on herself. This was the story explaining why she had become the way she was. February. The story rewound to before she left the forest. Ren believed she had gathered enough supplies to survive the winter. All that remained was deciding how she would spend her time. Back when she had still been a researcher, she had always been pressured by time, constantly chased by deadlines. Now, as she reflected on her current life, she felt that the life of a hermit was, in her own way of thinking, extremely boring. Her daily routine skills were no longer leveling up very much. She thought that if she did not speak or move at all, her body and even her heart would eventually become unhealthy. Her creation magic and related skills were far too powerful, and because of that she had completely neglected physical exercise. As a result, when she had been forced into combat before, she had ended up suffering from severe muscle pain. If something like that happened again, or if those who had attacked Norn were to strike once more, she would be in trouble. Rin concluded that there was nothing wrong with training her body, and with that decision made, she resolved to start exercising. She began by relaxing her body. Using her tailoring skill, she made and wore a leotard-like outfit, and she was surprised at how easily she could move while wearing it. She realized that if she used her storage magic to put away all of her furniture, she could turn her living room into an exercise space. She then took synthetic resin out of storage and used her creation magic to make equipment she could use for training. In the end, Rin created an exercise ball. She thought it would be good for training her inner muscles and her hips, a true piece of fitness equipment designed for girls. Sitting on the ball, she considered that whenever she felt bored, she could use it to exercise and train her body instead. She started by lying across the top of the ball and doing stretches, but she slipped and struggled to keep her balance. In her opinion, it was still quite difficult. For Ren, doing push-ups on top of an exercise ball was extremely hard. She had gone to the gym in her previous life, so she assumed it would not be that difficult, yet she found that she could no longer do what her former self had been capable of. Still, the training she was doing was mainly meant to stave off boredom. As she struggled, she reminded herself that she needed to visualize her muscles properly. In her mind, she focused on controlling her breathing and kept her eyes on the mirror to check whether her form was correct. In the end, Rin fell off the exercise ball. What followed felt to her like the beginning of some absurd internal competition. That night, she lay on the floor, thinking that she was far too cute for her own good and that it was all rather rough on her. She worried that if this continued and her lewdness level rose again, her future might turn out to be something truly frightening. A horse-drawn carriage was moving along the road, with Belle and the giant wolf trailing behind it. Inside the carriage, Ren was sleeping. When she woke up, she introduced herself and explained that she had been run over all of a sudden. The one who had ended up hitting her was a modest merchant, and the destination of the carriage that had struck her was a town called Harula, which was also where she was currently heading while riding in the carriage. Norn and Belle followed behind on foot. The merchant remarked that Ren was quite an impressive tamer for her age. Ren brushed it off, thinking to herself that the two animals he was referring to were actually her friends. She observed the merchant closely and thought that he must be the well-known trader named Nikoru. He still looked young, and Ren estimated that he was probably in his 30s. The shop assistant traveling with him was called Lewd and appeared to be slightly older than Ren. There was also a little girl who was clearly enjoying Ren's company. The girl was Nikoru's daughter, Elsa, and she quickly grew attached to Ren. There were also two other people traveling with them, hired as guards for the carriage. They gave off an unpleasant atmosphere, so Ren paid them little attention. What bothered her was that they would not stop glaring at her chest, which made her feel uncomfortable and disgusted. Ren kept her face hidden while remaining alert and watching their behavior carefully. After some time, the group stopped near the riverbank. Ren guessed that they planned to set up camp there for the day. She wished they could reach the city sooner. She climbed down from the carriage, thinking that riding in a horse-drawn carriage all day made her entire body ache. She petted Belle and instructed both Norn and Belle to keep watch. While she wandered nearby, she overheard Nikoru and the guards talking. Ren frowned as she listened. Nikoru seemed to be saying that it was easy for the guards to speak the way they did, but that everything should be handled according to their contract. The guards cut him off, claiming that it was thanks to them that he was even still alive. In Ren's mind, she questioned what they were talking about. From her perspective, the guards had not really done anything yet, and they were already trying to extort him. Ren thought they needed to hurry back to the city as soon as possible, especially since they were already running low on water. She also realized that she had been dozing off a lot recently because she had been busy the previous night, which explained why she had gotten run over in the first place. She concluded that those two guards were the source of the problem and decided that she needed to put a stop to it. Ren approached them and offered to share some of her rations. She smiled and explained that they had been kind enough to let her hitch a ride in their carriage, and that she did not eat very much anyway. Nikoru reacted with surprise and said it was unnecessary, but one of the guards immediately showed interest and eagerly accepted. Ren quickly took rabbit meat out of her storage and suggested it as food. Someone reacted in surprise, mentioning an item box. Ren realized her slip. An item box was a skill that allowed items to be inserted into and taken out of a separate space. It was different from her own storage ability, as it had limits on capacity and time continued to pass inside it. Even so, it was a very convenient skill commonly used by merchants and adventurers. Nikoru and the others were left speechless. Ren felt relieved that they had mistaken her ability for an item box. If they were to discover that she possessed the far rarer skill known as storage, she would be in serious trouble. She then realized that Elsa was nowhere to be seen and asked where she was. Nikoru immediately noticed as well, and they all began searching for her together. Ren spotted one of the guards sitting idly and overheard him complaining about being hungry. She inwardly questioned why he was not moving around to help keep watch. Not long after, Ren found Elsa. Hearing her call out, Ren hurried over and scolded her for wandering off alone, explaining that it was dangerous. Elsa reassured her by indicating that she had been with Belle. She pointed toward the dog-like companion. Nikoru then reprimanded Elsa, reminding her that there were monsters in the area and that she should not act so recklessly. As he spoke, he noticed how dirty she had become and commented on it. Ren dismissed the concern and immediately used her cleaning magic. Nikoru and the others were taken aback. Cleaning was part of her life magic, capable of removing stains and even disinfecting. Ren realized that she could probably run a business with purification magic alone, and that thought made her inwardly groan in frustration. She recognized that she had done it again without thinking. Elsa was fascinated by the magic. Nikoru observed that Ren was a tamer who could use an item box and magic, and Ren sensed a change in his gaze. She reflected that this was a habit she had developed while living alone. Whenever she sought efficiency, she instinctively relied on her skills, which caused her to stand out unintentionally. Nikoru asked what Elsa had been doing in the forest. Elsa explained that she had gone to gather mushrooms because there was no food. Nikoru seemed at a loss. Ren immediately realized the danger and explained that some mushrooms were poisonous. Although there were only a few types that were toxic once cooked, they were difficult to identify, such as the one she indicated. She tossed the poisonous mushrooms aside. Nikora looked puzzled from behind her. Rin realized what she had done and inwardly panicked. She had once again used her level 10 appraisal skill as naturally as breathing. Appraisal allowed one to understand an item's composition and, depending on skill level, even more detailed information. It was a skill merchants would kill to possess, and at higher levels it was said to reveal other people's statuses as well. Nikora questioned her about the appraisal she had just used, pointing out that she possessed an item box and appraisal. He wondered who she really was. Ren's thoughts raced as she realized how dangerous the situation had become. She had to avoid further suspicion, yet she had exposed herself again. Desperately, she searched for a plausible excuse and finally came up with an idea. Using her creation magic along with a block of titanium and several lenses, and reinforcing the structure with magic, Ren created a pair of glasses. She explained that these glasses were the reason she had been able to do what she did, as they had the ability of appraisal imbued into them. Elsa wondered aloud whether Ren had been wearing glasses all along. Ren clarified that the item was extremely valuable and allowed the use of appraisal up to level 2. It consumed a large amount of mana, but even someone without innate skills could use it. She added that she possessed various heirlooms, mementos, and gifts back at her house. Nikora was deeply impressed and asked if he could try the glasses for himself. Ren agreed and handed them over. When Nikora put them on, he was astonished, experiencing firsthand what the appraisal skill felt like. The children soon wanted to borrow the glasses as well. Watching their reactions, Ren felt a wave of relief. She thought that her improvised explanation had gone surprisingly well. The item she had created on the spot had intentionally vague details, which made it easier to sell the story and give it a sense of authenticity. From then on, Ren knew she would have to continue wearing the glasses if she wanted to conceal the fact that she actually possessed appraisal herself. She noticed the guards glaring at her again and hoped they were not harboring any strange ideas. Even if they were, she decided it was best to ignore them. Before long, Ren began cooking. She stir-fried minced onions, carrots, and celery, adding in the mushrooms Elsa had gathered. Using her storage skill, she quickly took out rabbit meat, grilling it slowly over low heat, then added tomatoes for extra flavor. Once finished, she served the dishes on the table, wraps of mushrooms and vegetables paired with rabbit meat, topped with tomato sauce. Nikora was amazed by the result, noting how the lightness of the rabbit meat paired perfectly with the slightly thick tomato sauce, while the vegetables enhanced the richness of the flavor. Elsa eagerly ate as well, surprised by how good the texture of the mushrooms was. Nikora admitted that he never imagined such a meal could be prepared in the middle of the forest, and Elsa declared that it was better than any restaurant food she had ever eaten. For Ren, both in her past life and even now, living with other people had always felt like a burden. Yet moments like this, seeing the happy expressions of people enjoying her cooking, were something she never would have experienced had she continued living completely alone. When the guards asked for a second helping, Ren refused, stating that there was nothing left. The following morning, they set off again, guiding the horse-drawn carriage toward their destination. Ren learned that once they passed Kazufuki Peak, they would reach Harula in 1 or 2 days. Ren wondered whether it was really alright for her to be traveling this far out. She felt that the breeze was pleasant, yet at the same time she knew that she already stood out far too much. She needed to calm herself and properly prepare for whatever lay ahead. Suddenly, the carriage passed over a deep pit, and the violent shaking caused her hood to slip off. The people inside the carriage were startled, their eyes drawn to her appearance. Elsa reacted with open admiration, repeatedly calling out to her. Ren hurriedly pulled the hood of her cloak back over her head. Elsa kept insisting that Ren was extremely cute and beautiful, saying it was a waste for her to keep hiding herself like that. Ren could only think that she wanted it to stop, because the more it was emphasized, the stranger people would look at her. One of the guards, the short-haired one, spoke up and suggested that Ren join their party after their guard contract ended. Even if she was a tamer, he said, it was dangerous for a woman to travel alone. He claimed that they might not look like it, but they were C-rank adventurers. Ren immediately rejected that in her mind. She could see their status clearly, and they were extremely weak. Nikora was stronger than either of them. On top of that, the guards would not stop staring at her chest, their lecherous gazes making her skin crawl. Ren had a very bad feeling about this. Being an old man at heart, she knew she would refuse outright. She could not deal with men like that. At this point, she could only rely on Nikora, who was married, to act as a buffer. However, Nikora then made matters worse by casually commenting about not worrying over an age gap and suggesting she become the woman for his son. Ren was furious internally. She realized that she had somehow become a candidate to be his son's future wife. She noticed Lloyd standing nearby, his ears burning red as he remained completely silent. Ren grimaced, realizing that it was her face that stood out the most. She cursed her fate for being reborn as a beautiful woman. At that moment, something sudden happened. The horses began to act wildly. The guards shouted in confusion, asking what was going on. Nikoro quickly called out their names, warning them that monsters were ahead. A group of orcs had appeared, blocking their path. Kinburo identified them as a herd of orcs, counting 6 in total, while the other guard, Gigi, pointed out that they were armed, making the situation extremely dangerous. Nikoro urged the guards to deal with them, reminding them that guarding the caravan was their job. Ren watched closely, thinking that this was finally going to be a real adventurer's battle. The status she had seen earlier was only an estimate of their raw power. Now she would see how their actual combat experience came into play against the orcs. Instead, to everyone's shock, the guards immediately panicked. They shouted that it was impossible and that they were getting out of there. Nikoro protested, demanding to know what they were saying and telling them to stop fooling around. In the next instant, Gigi drew his sword and struck Nikoro down, declaring that he was not going to throw his life away like this. Nikoro was badly injured, and Elsa cried out in distress. Ren stood frozen in shock, unable to comprehend how the situation had spiraled into something so absurd and horrifying.